If one day, in a sunburned frontier town, a poor boy dropped to his knees in front of a stranger and whispered, "Please, take my sister instead of me," what do you think that woman would do? The setting sun leaned hard against Mesquite Crossing, a forgotten town wedged between the desert and a ridge of red stone. Hot wind scraped across faded porches, carrying the smell of dust, horses, and the end of another unforgiving day. In the middle of the road, a skinny boy stood tall, even though his hands were shaking. His shirt was torn, his boots nearly falling apart, but his eyes, steady, fierce, held a kind of courage no 14-year-old should ever need. Beside him, a little girl with pale blonde hair clung to his arm, clutching an old music box like it was the last solid thing in her world. If she let go, everything might collapse. Standing across from them was Mae Hollister, the horse rancher everyone in southern New Mexico whispered about. Tall, broad-shouldered, a long duster coat swayed behind her like a weathered flag. Her gray-brown eyes held no expression at all. People said Mae once buried her husband and her only son with her own hands, then built an entire ranch out of nothing but sand, sweat, and grief. A woman like that didn't soften easily. "Please," the boy's voice cracked, raw from fear and thirst. "You can take her with you. Give her somewhere to live. I'll go anywhere you tell me to. Just don't leave her behind." The wind kicked up red dust curling around all three of them. No one spoke. Mae just stared into the eyes of those two orphans, silent, unblinking, as if weighing the worth of their souls. And that moment was the beginning of everything. Mesquite Crossing wasn't a place where people came to dream. It was a strip of dusty red earth between the Chihuahuan Desert and the rocky hills of New Mexico. Only two kinds of people ever stopped here: those who didn't care anymore, and those who had nowhere else to go. Late afternoon heat shimmered over the street. The wind was dry enough to crack skin, rattling the crooked sign of the Rattlesnake Saloon. A couple of starved dogs lay in the sliver of shade beneath a porch. In the distance, a wagon train crawled across the horizon in a cloud of dust. Jack Rowan walked down the main road with his little sister's hand locked in his. His shirt was soaked with sweat, sleeves torn, wrists darkened by sun and dirt. He was 14, but his eyes held the exhaustion of someone who'd lived too long with fear. Nora followed half a step behind. Her dress was ripped at the knee, her small hands wrapped around an old music box. Every so often she'd open it, listen to a few fading notes, then shut it again quickly, as if afraid the melody might escape. Under that furnace-red sunset, the two of them looked like shadows lost in a place that didn't want to claim them. Jack stopped in front of the largest horse stable in town, where several grown men stood in line hoping to be hired. He squeezed Nora's hand. She tugged his sleeve, her voice trembling. "Are we going to get kicked out again, Jack?" He shook his head, whispering, "Not this time. This time I have a plan." That was when they saw her, Mae Hollister. She emerged from the general store, long brown duster brushing against her tall boots, dust clinging to the leather like a second skin. The wide brim hat shadowed most of her face, revealing only sharp gray-brown eyes that made grown men stop mid-sentence. A gray mare followed behind her, muscles rippling under its coat. One look, and you'd know the horse didn't obey anyone except its owner. People whispered stories about Mae Hollister, how she had once been married to a cavalry officer, how she built Hollister Ranch from nothing, how, one year, a border gang killed her husband and young son, and she buried them both herself. Since then, Mae lived with the land, and the land made her stone. Jack stepped directly into her path. "Mrs. Hollister," he said, voice thin but steady. I heard you're looking for someone to help at your ranch. Mae didn't even blink. I don't hire children. Jack swallowed hard. I'm not here for me, he said, forcing the words out like they were knives. I'm here for my sister. Nora jerked her hand away, eyes wide. Jack. But he kept going. I saw the Calhoun gang, Jack said quietly. I saw their faces when they killed a man on the South Trail. They're looking for a witness. He took a breath, then lowered his voice. They want to kill me. Nora doesn't know anything. She's just a kid. Please, take her. Give her a place to live. I'll go anywhere you tell me to. Wind swept the red dust around the three of them. Nobody in town dared interrupt. Nora started crying, voice cracking. You're lying. I'm not leaving if you're not. Jack dropped to his knees and grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me, I'll be fine. But you have to live, Nora. Do you understand? Mae finally spoke. What if I told you, she said slowly, that I could take both of you? Jack's head snapped up. You would? I don't joke, she replied, her voice as flat as the desert. If the Calhoun gang is real, I have men, I have guns, I know how to defend what's mine, but I don't feed freeloaders. She leaned down, her gaze locked on his. At Hollister Ranch, everyone earns their meal. You wake with the crew, you work with the crew, you keep up, understood? Jack hesitated. Aren't you afraid they'll come after you? Mae tightened the reins, eyes narrowing just a fraction. Kid, there are two things in this world you don't waste time being afraid of: the dark and the threats of cowards. She swung onto her horse. My wagon leaves before sunset. If you truly want a different life, be at the grain depot on the north side. If not, stay here. The mare turned, hooves kicking up dust. Jack watched her disappear in the fading light. Nora sniffed, voice barely a whisper. Do you really trust her? Jack took her hand again, gaze fixed on the town's edge. I don't know, but if she means what she said, this is our only chance. The church bell rang 3 short notes. The sun dipped lower, stretching their shadows long across the cracked red dirt. In an hour, they would choose: stay with fear, or climb onto the wagon of the most feared woman in the territory. Sometimes, the door to safety isn't opened by kindness. Sometimes, it's opened by someone everyone swears has no heart. The sun dropped behind the barren hills like a wound closing slowly, staining the sky with red. Mae Hollister's 2-wheeled wagon waited on the north edge of town, right where the dirt road stretched toward the desert. Mae sat up front, reins in hand. Beside her was a tall native man with wind-burned skin and a silence carved into his face. People called him Eli Redbird. No one knew where Eli came from. All they knew was that he didn't speak. His voice had been taken from him years ago in a gunfight. But everyone who worked beside him understood one thing: the silent man missed nothing. Jack held Nora's hand as they approached. She was still trembling, but in her eyes was something new. A small flicker. Hope. Mae didn't speak. She simply nodded once, and Eli helped lift the children onto the back of the wagon. The wheels rolled forward, iron grinding against dry earth like steel scraping rock. Mesquite Crossing began to shrink. The rundown saloon sign, the barking dogs, the dusty porches, all faded into a haze. Ahead stretched a road that seemed to have no end, twisting through cactus and red sand. Daylight vanished. The heat drained from the air, and a desert chill began rising from the dirt. Nora curled in on herself. Jack pulled his thin blanket around her shoulders. He glanced toward Mae. She rode straight-backed, quiet, her hands steady on the reins. Eli stared at the horizon. His face revealed nothing. Yet every time the wagon hit a rut, he braced his arm behind Nora so she wouldn't slam into the boards. The gesture was small, but Jack noticed. He realized the silent man saw everything. After nightfall, they stopped near a flat rock ledge beside a trickle of groundwater seeping from a crevice. Eli set up camp and built a fire. Mae unhitched the horses and pulled coffee and a can of meat from a cloth sack. Firelight flickered across 3 adults and 2 hungry children. Wind howled through the dry yucca like someone whispering in the dark. Jack ate slowly, studying Mae. He still didn't trust kindness. Too many had promised to help him before, then vanished. "Mrs. Hollister," he finally asked, voice careful, "your ranch is really this far from town?" Mae gave a slow nod, her voice deep and rough. "1 more day's ride. Once we cross the second ridge, you'll see the cottonwoods. Past that, it's my land." My land. The way she said it made Jack shiver, not out of arrogance, out of certainty. She had taken that land from death and from the desert. The desert night turned bone cold. Eli fed the fire, golden light warming the 2 children's faces. Nora quietly opened her music box. A fragile tune drifted into the air, thin, broken, like a memory breathing its last breath. The notes traveled over cacti and into the star-choked sky. Mae listened, her eyes lowering. For a moment, she didn't look like the hard ranch owner the world feared. She looked like a mother remembering a child who would never come home. When the music faded, she spoke softly, almost to herself. "That melody, old, but beautiful." Nora nodded shyly. "It's the song my mama used to hum before she got sick." Mae didn't reply at first. The wind lifted the corner of her coat like a sigh. "Keep it close, sweetheart. Things like that are how we make sure people don't disappear." Jack looked up sharply. For the first time, he saw the slightest crack in Mae Hollister's armor. At dawn, they started again. The sky shifted from copper to gold. The desert lit up like an ocean of fire. Tumbleweeds hopped across the road. Vultures circled high above, riding the currents. The farther they traveled into Mae's territory, the more the land began to change. Sand gave way to soft grasses. The air smelled of water. Jack froze. He hadn't smelled fresh grass in months. "Jack, look! Horses!" Nora shouted. In the distance, wild horses ran across the open plain, manes whipping in the wind, bodies gleaming like bronze in the sun. The sight stole the breath from Jack's lungs. Mae glanced back at them. "They're the freest creatures in this territory, also the hardest to tame." Then she added, to no one in particular, "just like people." By late afternoon, they reached a low ridge of sand, and there it was. Hollister Ranch. A hidden valley unfolded beneath them, shockingly green in the middle of the desert. A narrow stream wound through the land. Cottonwoods stood tall and silver, and long wooden barns stretched across the property. Beyond them, a 2-story house sat under the shade of a wide porch. The wood was dark and weathered. Flower pots lined the railing. A swing chair rocked slightly in the wind. Nora's mouth fell open. Jack forgot to breathe. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Mae heard him. She didn't soften. "Beautiful, yes, but beauty means nothing if you can't hold on to it. To keep this ranch, you work like your life depends on every horse out here." Eli turned and gave a faint smile. one of the rare smiles of a man who spoke with gestures, not words. Jack squeezed Nora's hand. He felt something warm stir beneath his ribs, something he thought had died long ago, hope. As the last sunlight bled out behind the hills, 2 orphaned children stepped onto the land that would change their lives. They didn't know it yet, but the woman who brought them here was testing them. She needed to know if their hearts were worth trusting. Hollister Ranch was its own world. No saloon noise, no drunks yelling in the street, just wind, wood, and the rhythm of work. From morning to evening, you could hear the hammering of horseshoes, the sharp crack of a whip cutting the air, and the restless whinny of horses waiting to run. When Mae's wagon stopped in the middle of the yard, a few ranch hands stepped out from the stables. They wore rough shirts, leather gloves, and expressions that hovered somewhere between curiosity and caution. A gray-bearded man tipped his hat to Mae. "So you brought back a couple new strays, ma'am?" Mae didn't flinch. "2 kids who need a place to stay. They will earn their meals." That sentence hit Jack harder than it should have. Earn their meals. Such a thin line between mercy and obligation. He nodded anyway, as if accepting the terms without argument. From behind the stables, a woman appeared. She was round, suntanned, with black hair twisted into a bun and a bright floral apron that looked almost ridiculous against the dusty ranch backdrop. She carried a basket of eggs against her hip. "Senora Pilar," Mae said. "These are the 2 kids I mentioned." Pilar nodded, her accent warm and musical. "Ah, see, the children from the road." She set the basket down and softened her gaze toward Jack and Nora. "I am Pilar. The girl will help me in the kitchen. The boy will work wherever Mrs. Hollister decides." Nora shrank behind Jack. Pilar crouched slightly, smiling with a kindness that was steady and real. "Do not be afraid, pequeña. If you work, you eat. I will teach you to bake bread, wash dishes, plant vegetables. Easy." Her voice was sunlight wrapped in human form. Mae led them across the ranch yard. Horses leaned their heads over the rails, dark eyes glistening. The smell of hay mixed with leather and hot iron from the farrier's tools. Eli Redbird was repairing a fence, driving each nail with precise, powerful swings. When the children passed, he simply nodded. Jack nodded back. No words, but an understanding passed between them. Mae pointed toward a small cabin set a little apart from the others. "That will be your room, old guest house. I had it cleaned." Inside, sunlight filtered through the dusty window. 2 narrow beds stood against the wall, a rough wooden table, a stone fireplace. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and real. Nora ran her fingers across the blanket, whispering as if afraid speaking too loudly would break the spell. "Jack, we each have a bed." Jack watched her, throat tight. He hadn't seen her smile like that in a long time. He turned to Mae. "Thank you. Truly." Mae folded her arms. "Do not thank me. No one stays here without working. If you want to keep a roof over your heads, you earn it like everyone else." Jack stood straighter. "We understand." "Good. Tomorrow you wake before the sun. The boy goes with Eli. The girl works with Pilar. Everyone has a place." She turned and walked away, her shadow stretching long across the red earth. Evening settled. Nora watched a herd of horses circling the big pen. Their manes caught the fading sunlight like ribbons of molten gold. Smoke from the kitchen rose into the air, carrying the smell of beef stew. Pilar arrived with a wooden tray. "Eat, pequeños, not fancy, but enough for hungry bellies." Bowls of beans, cornbread, and thick milk. Jack devoured his meal with the quick desperation of someone who hasn't trusted a dinner in months. Nora ate slowly, but her eyes sparkled. Pilar sat near the door, watching them. After a moment, she said quietly, almost like a proverb, "People think dry land cannot grow anything, but give it one drop of water and suddenly there is grass. Children are the same." Jack paused mid-bite. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she smiled, "kindness is like soil. Someone has to be brave enough to plant first." She stood and walked away, leaving the words hanging in the air like warm smoke. That night, as the fire cracked in the old stone hearth, Jack lay awake staring at the ceiling. Nora slept soundly beside him, arms wrapped around her music box. Outside, wind whistled through the cracks, carrying the sound of hooves and an owl calling from the trees. Jack thought of Mae Hollister. He didn't know what she wanted from them, but something in the way she walked and spoke convinced him of one simple truth. If he proved himself, she would not abandon them. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would wake before dawn. Tomorrow he would work like his life depended on it. Because maybe it did. And as the first light of morning spilled across the cracked earth and the ranch bell rang out, 2 children woke to their first day on the ranch. The first day of the rest of their lives. The metal bell rang before the sun was fully awake. Its sharp clang cut through the mist like a knife. Jack jolted upright on his narrow cot, heart kicking fast. Not out of fear, out of the strange, unfamiliar feeling of having somewhere to wake up to. Across the room, Nora slept, curled in her blanket, breathing softly. Her small face was finally peaceful, not twisted with worry. Jack pulled the covers up over her shoulders, tugged on his boots, threw on a rough work shirt, and stepped into the morning. The sky was still dark purple, but the ranch was already alive. Men led horses out of the barns, breath steaming in the cold air. Hay, leather, smoke, and sweat blended into a scent that only existed in places where people worked for real. Eli Redbird stood waiting at the fence line, sleeves rolled, old leather gloves on his hands. When Jack approached, Eli nodded once. No words. He handed Jack a shovel. Jack understood. First job of the day, mucking stalls. He got to it. Manure, straw, the thick ammonia burn that clung to your throat. Most kids would gag or complain. Jack didn't. He shoveled, hauled, dumped, watched Eli out of the corner of his eye and matched his pace. Sweat soaked through his shirt. Dirt glued itself to his arms, but it felt good. When he finished the second stall, Eli stepped over, rested a hand on Jack's shoulder, and gave the smallest curve of a smile. A silent kind of praise. Jack returned it with the briefest grin, then went right back to work. Across the ranch, Nora was in the kitchen with Pilar. Beans simmered in a pot, vegetables hit the cutting board, and fire snapped under the stove. Pilar showed Nora how to knead dough while talking in her warm, melodic accent. When I came here, I had nothing but these 2 hands. Hollister Ranch does not need perfect people. It needs people who stay. Nora nodded, face smudged with flour. Her first cornbread came out lopsided and crooked. Pilar laughed loud and full. Ugly but delicious. Just like life. That laugh drifted across the yard. Even Jack paused long enough to smile. By midday, the sun hit hard. Jack finished the last stall. His palms were raw, shoulders burning, but the satisfaction in his chest was solid. Eli handed him a water canteen and pointed toward the west paddock. A crowd had gathered. Jack walked over. A massive gray-black stallion tore across the pen, hooves striking dirt like thunder. Its eyes were wide, rolling with panic. Foam dripped from its mouth. A cowboy tried to throw a rope over its head. The instant the rope touched, the stallion reared and hurled the man to the ground. Someone cursed. "Storm chaser," a cowboy muttered. "That devil has broken 3 men already." Jack leaned against the rail, staring. There was something in that horse's eyes that made his chest ache. Not anger, fear, the kind of fear that makes you fight your own shadow. Jack glanced at Eli and motioned a question. Eli crouched and scratched a few words into the dirt with a nail. Beaten before he got here, scared of people. Jack read it, swallowed hard. Quietly, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "He's not mean. He's hurt." And without warning, Jack opened the gate. A few ranch hands sucked in breath to yell, but Eli raised his hand, stopping them. Jack stepped into the pen, slow, steady. Sand crunched under his boots. Storm chaser wheeled, nostrils flaring, every muscle tight. Jack lowered his head, loosened his body, and spoke softly. "I'm not here to break you. I'm not here to take anything." The stallion pawed the ground, snorted hard. Jack took another step, and another. He didn't reach out. He waited. A minute passed. Another. Then Storm Chaser lowered his head, inch by inch, and took one cautious step toward Jack. The ranch yard fell silent. When the horse finally touched its nose to Jack's open palm, the crowd froze. Storm Chaser sniffed his hand, blew out a breath, and shook its mane. Jack whispered, "Good. You're safe here." Eli nodded, respect shining in his eyes. A cowboy muttered, "What kind of magic did that kid just pull?" Eli simply shrugged and smiled, a very rare smile. Up on the porch, Mae Hollister watched, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Wind pulled at her coat. Sun carved hard lines across her face. For the first time, she didn't just see a ragged boy. She saw someone who listened, someone who understood the broken. Without a word, she turned and went inside. Eli watched her leave with a faint tilt of his head, as if he understood the thought crossing her mind. This boy is different. Late afternoon came. Jack washed his hands at the well, cold water stinging the blisters. Nora ran toward him, flour smudged on her cheeks, waving excitedly. "Jack, I baked cornbread. Pilar said it's even better than yesterday." Jack ruffled her hair. "That's great. I made a friend today." "A person?" Jack grinned. "A horse, a very angry one." Nora tilted her head. "You can talk to everything, can't you?" Jack smirked. "Maybe I just know what scared feels like." That night, the fire in their tiny cabin crackled warm. Nora fell asleep hugging her music box. Jack sat by the fire, replaying the moment in the pen. The look in Storm Chaser's eyes, Mae's silent observation. Something was shifting, slow and deep. Like dry earth drinking water after the first rain, out there in the desert wind, a woman who never trusted anyone found herself watching a boy she could not quite figure out. And somewhere inside her, a door she thought was permanently closed began to loosen. The afternoon fell over the desert like a slow-moving golden blanket. A light autumn wind carried the scent of dry grass and horse sweat, brushing through the cottonwoods and making the leaves whisper. Jack had just finished his work for the day. His back ached, his palms were blistered, yet for the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. He was putting away tack in the barn when a voice came from behind. Rough, low, gravel over stone. "Boy, walk with me." Jack turned. Mae Hollister stood framed in the doorway, wind tugging loose strands of silver hair from beneath her hat. The sunset painted her face half in shadow, half in firelight. Something about her gaze made Jack's heart hammer in his chest, like he had just been called to judgment. They walked up the ridge behind the ranch. From up there, the entire valley stretched out beneath them. The stream glimmered silver under the fading sun. Horses grazed in the distance, their shadows stretching long across the grass. Down below, Eli Redbird glanced up and saw them. He tilted his head once in understanding, then went back to work. Whatever conversation was about to happen was meant for only two people. Mae stopped near a large boulder. She said nothing at first, so long that Jack wondered if she had simply brought him up here to stare at the horizon. Then, without turning her head, she finally spoke. "Jack, if someone put a gun to your sister's head and told you to choose between her life and yours, who would you choose?" Jack froze. It sounded like a hypothetical question, but her eyes said it wasn't. He answered immediately. "My sister, every time." Mae's expression didn't change. "You are certain?" Jack nodded. "I promised my mother I would protect Nora, no matter what." Wind swept across the hill, bending the dry grass flat. Something in Mae's eyes reflected the sun, grief or memory. "What if," Mae continued, voice lower, "the only way to save her required you to do something that seemed wrong? Would you still do it?" Jack hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. "If it kept her safe, I would do it. Even if everyone thought I was the villain. Even if it cost me everything." Mae studied him, the way a judge weighs truth without a jury. Then she turned toward the horizon, watching the sun sink behind the red cliffs. The light carved deep lines across her face, lines that looked like scars. "Jack," she said quietly, "do you know why I knew about the Calhoun gang? Why I showed up in that town at the exact moment you needed shelter?" Jack's breath caught. "You knew beforehand?" Mae finally faced him. "I knew more than that." Her voice carried the weight of years. "And I think it is time you knew the truth." She took a slow breath. "The Calhoun gang you fear so much was arrested 3 weeks ago. Every member is in the Silver Mesa jail." Silence hit the hill like stone. Jack felt his throat clamp shut. "What? What are you saying?" "I am saying no one is hunting you. No one is following you. The danger you fear is gone." Jack took a step back. Then, why? Why bring us here? Why not tell the truth from the start? His voice cracked, brittle with betrayal. Mae didn't look away. "Because I needed to know who you were, Jack Rowan. I needed to know whether you were someone I could trust. And the only way to learn that was to put you in a place where only your heart could speak." Jack turned from her, fists tight. "You lied to us. I tested you." Her voice cut sharp. "Because this world is far crueler than anything I could ever put you through." She stepped closer, put a hand on his shoulder. Not forcing, offering. "If I told you everything was safe, you would have run again. You would have kept living scared, and sooner or later, fear would have killed you." Jack didn't answer. Tears fell silently, darkening the dust at his boots. Mae exhaled and sat down on the boulder, her voice lower now, more human. "I lost my husband and my son in a robbery 6 years ago. They were shot trying to protect our horses. I buried them myself in this valley. After that, I swore I would never care again." Her gaze drifted toward the ranch below. Hollister Ranch could survive on sweat, but not without a heart. Mae took another breath. I heard about two orphan siblings wandering from town to town, always together, always sharing the last bite of bread. And when I saw you kneel in that dusty street and beg for your sister's life, I saw the same look my husband had the night he died. Jack looked up, stunned. Mae's voice softened. I needed to know if that look was real, if a boy with nothing left could still choose love. Jack sank down beside the rock, legs giving out. The world felt too heavy, too sharp. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, he whispered, voice hoarse, "You knew I hate lies." "I did," Mae said. "Sometimes the truth is too heavy for a heart that is still growing." He swallowed hard. What happens now? No more tests. Mae stood, the last light framing her like a statue carved from iron and grief. "I know who you are. You put love above yourself, and that little girl believes in you with her whole life. That is all I need." She walked several steps down the hill, then paused. "Tomorrow, I will tell you the rest of the truth. But tonight, rest. A boy who has been running for so long must learn how to stop." Jack watched her go, until her figure vanished into the dying sun. He sat alone, listening to wind whistle through the grass. There was still anger in him, but threaded through it was gratitude, and something dangerously close to understanding. Down in the valley, the horses called to each other, and on the hilltop above them, a boy learned that the first lesson of the West had nothing to do with guns or horses. It was about the human heart. 3 days had passed since that evening on the ridge. Jack still woke at the clang of the ranch bell and worked alongside Eli like everyone else. But something in Mae Hollister's eyes had changed. She no longer watched him like an outsider she had to evaluate. She watched him like someone seeing a piece of herself return. That afternoon, rain came, real rain, rare in the desert. Water poured across the Hollister Valley, lifting the smell of wet soil into the air. Horses stomped nervously in their stalls. Nora ran past the kitchen door, laughing, holding out her palms. "Jack, it's raining! Look!" Jack stood under the overhang, letting the moment soak into him. In a place that survives on dust and heat, rain feels like a miracle. Eli passed by, gave Jack a single glance, then nodded toward the main porch. Mae was standing there, alone and unmoving, watching the storm roll across the pasture. Jack followed. Rain hammered the roof like distant drums. Mae did not turn when he arrived. "Out here," she said quietly, "rain is a reminder. Even the hardest ground can turn green, if it learns how to wait." Jack didn't interrupt. After a long moment, Mae faced him. "I told you I would finish the story. Now it's time." She pointed toward the pasture, where the horses moved like shadows between flashes of lightning. "This ranch had an heir once. My son, Joshua. He was your age when he died. He loved this land. He believed no one was hopeless." Her voice stayed steady, but grief lived in every word. "When he died, I lost my faith in people. I planned to finish my life like that. Cold, alone, and working until the day the land swallowed me." Mae's eyes settled on him. "Until you and your sister walked into Mesquite Crossing." Jack swallowed hard. Mae stepped closer. "When I told you everyone here earns their meal, I wasn't talking about labor. I was talking about heart, about honesty, about loyalty, and you've proven those things without a single speech." She rested her hand on his shoulder. "So now I need to ask you a different question. If I asked you to stay, not as workers, not as charity, but as family, Would you? Jack blinked, unsure he heard correctly. You're asking us to stay as what? Mae held his gaze. As my children. I want to adopt you, both of you, legally. No more hiding, no more running, no more fear. But it has to be your choice. If you want to leave, I will take you to town myself. I'll give you a horse, supplies, money, and a letter of introduction. The decision is yours. The rain softened to a gentle patter. Jack lowered his head. Memories crashed in. Nights sleeping behind stables, Nora's thin cough in the cold, Pilar's warm laughter in the kitchen, Eli's silent nods of approval, Storm Chaser's trembling breath against Jack's hand, and Mae's voice saying his name like she recognized it from another lifetime. If I say yes, what about Nora? I will ask her, Mae answered. But I already know her answer. She called me Miss Mae yesterday. My daughter used to say it the same way. Jack exhaled a shaky breath. Then he spoke. If Nora gets to stay here, if she gets to learn and smile and be safe, then I'll stay anywhere. But if you really mean it, if you really want both of us, then... He swallowed. Then I'd like to call you Mama Mae. Mae froze, just for a moment. Her eyes softened, then she turned away quickly, as if hiding a smile. Don't say that in front of the cowboys. I'm not ready to hear them tease me. Jack laughed under his breath, the kind of laugh that only comes after years of holding your breath. Eli appeared on the porch holding a folded document. Mae opened it. The printed heading read, Silver Mesa Courthouse, Calhoun Gang sentenced. The letter confirmed it. The outlaws who once threatened Jack had been tried and sentenced. No more danger. Mae folded the paper with a quiet breath. The last storm has passed. It's just us now, and this land. That night, Pilar made beef stew. Nora couldn't stop smiling. Eli ate quietly in the corner. Mae pretended not to enjoy the chaos. Jack ate without saving anything for later, something he had never done before. When the dishes were done and the ranch quieted, Mae stepped onto the porch again, looking toward the hills. Jack joined her. They stood side by side under a sky full of stars. Tomorrow, Mae said, I'll send the legal papers to Silver Mesa. The law will know you are no longer rootless. Jack nodded slowly. I used to be afraid of staying. I kept thinking people always leave. But now, I think I want to learn how to stop running. Mae nodded. Out here, choosing to stay is a kind of courage. The next morning, the world gleamed after the rain. Nora burst into the yard with a stamped document. Jack! Mae says we're real family now. Jack spun her in a circle as Storm Chaser reared in the paddock, mane whipping like a flag of victory. Mae watched them, lips moving silently. Eli noticed. He leaned closer and whispered. She just mouthed one word. Home. In a land once dried to the bone, a grieving woman and two lost children found each other. Not because of blood, but because they chose to stay. At Hollister Ranch, there were no outsiders anymore, only a family. 3 months later, winter winds swept across Hollister Valley, carrying the smell of distant snow and wood smoke. The sky turned silver gray, frost clung to the grass, and the hills wrapped themselves in the soft colors of winter. People say winter is the season of endings, but at Hollister Ranch, that winter was the beginning of everything. The small cabin where Jack and Nora once stayed temporarily didn't look temporary anymore. On the wall hung an old portrait of Mae from her younger years, painted with her son beside her. Next to it, a new frame had been added. Jack, Nora, and Mae, photographed with the precious camera Pilar guarded like treasure. Beneath it, Mae wrote in ink, "Family doesn't need blood to share the same heartbeat." At sunrise, Jack rode Storm Chaser through the fields. Frost shimmered on the ground, and the horses' breath smoked in the cold air. Their shadows stretched across the damp winter grass like two pieces of the same soul. At 15, Jack now stood taller and stronger. His eyes were no longer hollow from fear. They were steady, grounded. He leaned forward and stroked Storm Chaser's neck. "See? We're still here, together." The horse snorted, tipping its head gently toward him. Inside the main house, Nora sat on the kitchen counter, helping Pilar shape cookie dough. Cinnamon, butter, and sugar filled the warm room. Nora's cheeks were rosy, her hands dusted with flour. "Pilar, what shape does Miss Mae like?" Pilar raised an eyebrow. "Why do you ask?" "I want to surprise her." Pilar chuckled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Then you asked the right person. She loves anything shaped like a horse. But don't tell her I said that." Nora giggled. Outside, wind howled across the valley, but the kitchen glowed like a lantern against the cold. Later, Eli returned from the pasture, coat soaked from the sleet. He passed Jack, gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder, and traced a word in the air with his finger. "Son." Jack froze. The meaning sat heavy and warm in his chest. He didn't need to say anything. He simply placed his own hand over his heart in return. That evening, the ranch glowed with firelight. Pilar cooked the largest dinner since she arrived. Beef stew, skillet cornbread, baked apples, steaming cider. Eli lit a fire outside while Mae, wrapped in a dark wool coat, sat on the porch watching the horses sleep under the moonlight. Jack and Nora approached, each carrying a small gift wrapped in newspaper. Jack stepped forward first. "Miss Mae, we don't have anything fancy, just this." Mae opened the package. Inside was a worn horseshoe Jack had polished until it gleamed. He carved a shaky message into the metal. "Home is where you're forgiven." Mae traced the letters with her thumb. You know I can't stand useless gifts, but this..." Her voice thinned, eyes glistening. "This is the only kind worth keeping." Nora placed her gift in Mae's hands, the little music box she had carried all the way from the town where their story began. "I want you to have it. My mother said you only give memories to someone who won't let them disappear." Mae's hands trembled as she opened the lid. The fragile, broken tune played softly, a lullaby fighting to stay alive. Mae closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she let her tears fall freely. "I thought I lost everything," she whispered. "Maybe I was just waiting long enough to find it again, in a different form." Night settled over the ranch. Wind softened, the moon climbed higher, and firelight danced on the faces of the people gathered around it. Jack sat quietly. Nora leaned against his shoulder. Eli played a wooden flute, its gentle notes drifting into the cold night air. Pilar hummed an old Spanish lullaby, her voice low and warm. Mae watched them all with a softness no one had seen before. "I used to think Hollister Ranch was the only legacy I would leave behind. Land changes hands, horses grow old. But if something lasts beyond us, it's not land, it's people." She turned to Jack and Nora. "You are no longer guests. From this day on, this is home. And your name is Hollister." Silence followed her words. Then a soft breeze moved through the yard, like a blessing from something older than time. Nora wrapped her arms around Mae. Jack bowed his head. Firelight washed over their faces, three souls that had found each other without sharing a single drop of blood. The next morning, early winter sunlight poured across the ranch. Three figures walked the fence line. Mae in the middle, the children on either side. Eli rode nearby, smiling to himself. Pilar set out cooling racks of fresh bread on the porch, while bells jingled on the horses' bridles. The wind carried laughter across the open land. In a place once defined by dust and loss, they learned something most people spend a lifetime forgetting. Family isn't where you're born, it's where you choose to stay. Forgiveness isn't an ending, it's the beginning of rebirth. A new season had begun at Hollister Ranch. No more running, no more fear, only peace, built from trust and love. And when the music box played again that morning, its thin melody drifted across the open fields like a whisper from the Old West. Every lost soul can still find its way home. If you believe that somewhere out there, among the wind and dust of the West, there are still people finding one another, learning to love and to forgive, leave a comment below. Even just a simple hello. It lets us know you're still here, still listening to stories like this. And if you want to continue traveling with us, to places like Hollister Ranch, where kindness can change a life, hit like and subscribe. So when the sun slips behind the ridge and the world gets quiet, we can share another story together. A story reminding us that compassion never runs dry, even in a land of wind and sand.